What's up, Black Comic Lords? For half a century, Storm, Aurora Monroe, the Hadara Yao, has graced the pages of Marvel Comics. Over the decades, her impact has expanded to graphic novels, video games, animation, trading cards, live-action movies, young adult novels, and so much more. For so many, this orphan pickpocket from Harlem, New York, turned Omega-level mutant, redefined the complexity of power and the struggles that come with being a hero. But possibly the most powerful thing about Storm is the unique individual impact she has had on so many fans and creators. To that end, in celebration of her 50th anniversary, we have a few of those creators here with us today. Let's welcome Angelique Roche, Charles Stewart III, Andrew Dollhouse, and Murewa Ayodele. What's up, everybody?
Hello, everyone.
How you guys doing?
Good.
All right. Angelique, we're going to start with you.
Oh.
You have been killing it at Marvel. You are, for all intents and purposes, one of the faces of Marvel Comics. I just want to just focus on that for a moment and just give you your props.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the show. We haven't had you in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. You know, the world has it's been, I feel like it's been about 20 decades.
It has. Because you're doing more important things.
But it's good to be
like
back.
This.
Yeah.
Just yesterday. Yeah, man.
I'm sitting in the crib. I wake up, turn on the TV as I'm getting dressed, pop on the what's Fantastic Four? Let me click on this. Why is Angelique Roche on the screen? Why is she wearing these dope white boots? Mm-hmm. What's going on?
You know, I woke up and I decided that it was going to be Reed Richards chic yesterday. And I went for it. If he could do white boots.
Hanging out with superstars.
Yeah. They were pretty incredible. They are fantastic, one would say.
Not to make a pun.
Always for the pun.
So you have, for those who don't know, Angelique Roche is also one of the main brainchilds behind Marvel Voices for Marvel, the anthology book series that's been going on for how many years has it been now? 5, 6?
So, yes. So we had our first meeting about the anthology series in 2019. And the book was, ready to go and ready to print. Anybody knows anything about comic books, it was already done before 2020. So yeah, it's been about 6 years of that baby rolling out the door. And Marvel's Voices, the podcast, had been rolling for about a year at that point. And so now, you know, about 7-8 years in of work and meetings and development, you know, now it's Marvel's Voices anthology and now the Infinity Comics. So it's been pretty incredible.
You know, every year when you do this Marvel Voices book, one character that consistently makes an appearance is Storm. I want you to explain to us why that is.
She a baddie. What? She a baddie. I think the interesting part about it is that, you know, there are, and I gotta take my glasses off because I feel like all you can see is my screens. Storm and Misty Knight both have very important roles in the Marvel universe, right? So Storm being the first Black woman superhero, but Misty Knight being the first African American woman superhero in the Marvel universe, who eventually got brilliant writers. ironically, that brilliant writer being Chris Claremont, who loved them both very much, had a chance to touch a lot of people with their stories. But unlike Misty Knight, Storm got a chance to really enter a lot of folks' home through X-Men 92, right? There's no way you can have all of this. Like, she is amazing. She's one of the strongest characters. She's had a chance to lead over and over and over again, but she's also always had a moral compass. She's always had empathy. She's always been about her people. She's always, stepped into the room understanding who she is. And if she didn't, she's like, I'm gonna need to take a minute and figure this out, because normally I know who I am, right? But once X-Men 92 brought her to the forefront, and then it's video games, it's movies, there are people who cannot tell the difference between the Distinguished Competition and Marvel, but they know Storm.
Right.
And she has become an icon in a way, because she has touched almost every single part of the Marvel universe. And I would say there is no other Black woman character that has that much impact outside of Monica Rambeau.
Would it be safe to say that Storm is the world's most recognizable Black superheroine?
I just don't want to step on nobody's toes. Give me a second. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you looking at almost every single platform and medium,
right,
you have others that are gaining that level of notoriety more recently. Obviously, Shuri is younger. A lot of folks just kind of put her in the Black Panther pantheon, but they don't realize that she's relatively young compared to a Misty Knight or a Monica Rambeau,
right,
or a Storm. But I would have to say, particularly ones that have been conceived of as Black women, yes. Because you do have other characters that have crossed boundaries, or their legacy characters, or they've been portrayed differently. Obviously, Hawk Girl, which is much more of a nuanced character, from the Distinguished Competition, had a little bit of a moment on DC, and I don't know why they lost the opportunity not to put her on a big screen, but that's my feelings. But yeah, it's Storm.
Let's go to Storm's current writer in the regular series, Mr. Murewa Ayodele.
Crushing it.
One of the things Angelique mentioned is Storm's, at present, most definitive writer, Chris Claremont, in his run. It's interesting. One of the parts of this book, the Storm Lifedream book, I love the fact that they interviewed all you guys and asked, what was your introduction to Storm? Charles, you said X-Men 92. Angelique, I think I'm not X-Men 92. X-Men, the original cartoon from 92. Angelique, I believe you said the same.
Yeah.
Andrew, did you give an answer on that?
No, but it was the X-Men cartoon.
The cartoon.
I mean, we tried. Look. It one of the things about our roundtables when we, and this is one of the things folks don't know. I'm also consulting editor on the books. I'm also trying to wrangle. We want to make sure people got their pages in and did their thing before we, started asking them questions that would have taken up time required to get, their full brilliance on the page.
Well, see, that just makes me feel super old, because my introduction to Storm was back in the 80s with the Chris Claremont run, which, as I said, that is considered the most definitive version of Storm, or the most defining moments of Storm, until this guy came along,
yeah,
in my opinion. Murewa Ayodele, you have been tasked with redefining, or arguably defining, Storm for the new era. Um, Tell me the significance of this character to you, and why is it that you pour your heart out and soul into this character every single month, to the point that you're trolling on the internets by various fandoms is,
It's it's
categories.
it's 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 for the little things. For example, in Storm Lifedream, and I think in one of the closing panels where we see Storm returns to her bedroom, and then the background is this beautiful vegetation. And I was just so happy seeing that, because I'm like, now we finally have this visual representation of, oh, when we see this, we know that Storm is at home. Like, we're finally building like a visual representation of a mythos around Storm. Like, oh, this is what it means to be in Storm's sanctuary. This is what it means for a Storm costume to look like, and so many things around her as a solo hero outside the X-Men. We didn't need to see the X. You didn't need to see any X in that panel. You just needed to see, oh, a bed, a transparent background, and the flora. And that's what we are working at in this current era to kind of create for Storm, to create these iconic milestones for her, where you just, people can be able to touch on something and know that, okay, this is Storm. Or when you see something floating in the sky, you're like, okay, this silhouette, this thing, this is the Storm sanctuary, this is Storm herself. When you hear a particular sound effect, okay, this is Storm. The way you see Banff or Snicked, and you know that, oh yeah, this is Wolverine, this is Nightcrawler. So those are the kind of iconography we want to bring into this series and stamp into the Marvel universe, so that when you see these things, this is this character. And we're so happy that currently we've been able to prove everybody wrong, that Storm can have a solo series and she can stand on her own. And it's been very beautiful to see. And so that's why I wake up every morning trying to see how best we can do that.
I'm not interrupting, but like when he says beautiful, like I don't need to get physical. I go get them, every single one. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, Mateus Manahina is
Thank you.
killing those covers.
You
Yes,
set a new bar.
and to be honest, before I started plotting Lifedream, I had the idea, but I was like, I gotta read issue 1. We can't mess with it. We have to, and I'm glad that panel came off the way it did, because the intent was to always go, let's have some fun with her, but we have to give her back to Murewa in a way where we have not, like, if he wants to use it, great, but we cannot mess with any of these scripts, because we understood that you're building something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it was really, really lovely seeing all those things being referenced, the costume, the ruby, everything. So it was really lovely. It's nice seeing everyone speaking with one voice. So yeah, it was very, very lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed everything. So I wanted to ask you a question, like, how was the experience, like, putting together this team and the project itself?
So one, shout out to Brittany Morris, who just said hey, who is another writer
Hey.
on the book. Hey, Brittany. It was pretty incredible. It really kind of started off as a brainchild of another idea we had always kind of, and by we, so John Jennings and I have been like floating around ideas on 50th for Storm for like a good minute. And, I pitched a couple ideas, and shout out to Sarah Brunstead, who was the editor on this book and has been editor on every single Marvel's Voices book up until recently. She just found a new home outside of Marvel. And I remember I had had pitched an idea, and one day she had called me and she's like, so can you make that idea that's like supposed to be like 5 books, 1 book? And I was like, huh? What? And it took me a second in the middle of the conversation where she was telling me, go write the script. And so I think, and the idea was that we had the full plot, and the whole idea was that Storm was being archived by this interdimensional race who was benevolent, unlike the Collector. And their whole concept is, how do we archive all of these different variations of the timeline that continue to happen, right? That allows us to visit all of these pieces of Storm that we don't usually get to visit at the same time. And I had to make sure it gave folks like Curtis and Brittany space to create without locking them in too heavily. And so I literally went and like wrote the script in like 3 hours and was like, yo, I know you said I had 6 pages, but like, can I have 9? And the whole idea was like, I want to put her in a place, like even putting her in Egypt, I wanted her wardrobe to be fitting of modern, extravagant Egyptian clothing. The original market scene, and of course we didn't have the room to translate and all that stuff. Comics is in, Egyptian Arabic. A lot of folks think that's Little Storm. That's actually a version of Storm's granddaughter that first premiered in a Marvel's Voices issue last year. That is a program. So
let's jump into the book.
Yeah, we need a lot of nuances into that. But yeah, there's a lot more behind the story that we snuck into the background.
Let's pull it all in here. I gotta figure out how to do this. Here we go. Here are the covers with this book. First of all, shout out to my man Torrin Clark.
Always
killing it.
This guy.
First cover was in a Marvel's Voices. Always.
Good Lord. This man makes me spend a lot of money on comic books. I mean, I find myself in the position where I buy comics just because Torrin Clark did the cover. It could be something I could really care less about. But because Torrin does the cover, I have to collect it because I'm a Torrin Clark fan.
If it is a Brian Stelfreeze, a Torrin Clark, a Scotty Young, a Jim Bartell, like, it goes straight into plastic because I've already read it, but I gotta buy it.
Right. And I can say that for another artist you have here on the far end, Olivier Coipel.
Yep.
Who's literally probably one of my top 3 favorite artists of all time. That's it's not a complicated piece, but it's beautiful.
But it tells a story.
Yeah, it does. And then we've got this up and coming. Is this second one? Is that Karen Darboe?
Yes.
Up and coming artist.
I believe so.
She's really been killing it. And the third one, is that Ryan Benjamin? Who did the third one?
No, Lucas Vernick.
That was Lucas? Okay.
Yeah.
Who is your partner?
Lucas is a monster.
Yeah.
In the best way. That was a compliment.
You guys didn't spend much on the talent on this book at all. Did you have a say in the team that you got?
So as consulting editor, and I've been a consulting editor on all the Marvel's Voices books, my job is all the ancillaries, right? So any of the roundtables, the interviews, but I've had the pleasure and the privilege of suggesting people for the last 6 or 7 years, pushing folks, making suggestions on folks that we've been watching. But Sarah is brilliant, right? Sarah Brunson is constantly looking for talent. She is constantly searching inside and outside, reading all types of comics to bring in new folks. And so, I also got very lucky. I have an editor, and she'll show them to me. I'll see the name and be like, oh, snap. they're perfect. Da, 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 da. But I got really lucky because I got the one and only Aletha Martinez, who, you know, and one of the key reasons I think that Sarah chose her is because it is the key background story, which meant all of the character designs of Ptolemy and Akasha and Blue, they came from Aletha, and then everyone else worked off those character designs and made them absolutely gorgeous in their own way, especially Akasha and Ptolemy, which and then, you know, I was never gonna like Curtis Baxter and Brittany Morris, like, come on. And I had met Brittany when she did her first book for Spider-Man, and so I was already a huge fan.
All right, so let's check out the interiors. Here's your team we're talking about here. Prologue done by John Jennings. Shout out to John Jennings, who was supposed to be here tonight. I'm gonna troll you a little bit, John, because I know you're probably at a basketball game right now. You're still my man. You're still my man.
So if you want, I can literally go through the process for this. The way it kind of came together is once we had the initial script locked, Brittany and Curtis and I with Sarah sat on a Zoom call and just started brainstorming. Like we knew what needed to happen in each chapter, and we knew where she needed to end up in those final pages, because my story was those first pages and those like last two. And then Brittany and Curtis went and did their thing. Which John and I also did on, like, because he had the privilege of having kind of a story that lived on its own. We also got on a Zoom a little later and we like, how do we set this up? I love you, Brittany. How do we set this up where we understand how the archivist got to the space they're in, right? Like, how do they get on the Wind Rider? What is this whole process? And give us a little bit of background on this new alien race, and why they're doing this.
Let's show everyone what you're talking about. So here we go. Prologue. This is the section that was done by John Jennings and Edwin Gallman, who is another beast of an artist.
Beast.
I love the very first line. Deep space, home to the ancient race of interdimensional archivists. I love every single word in that one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
What a way to start off the book, setting the tone. Because now I have questions. I have like a lot of questions. Who is this race? Why are they so melanated? Black people make it out of our present year and situation and make it into deep space in the future someday. And apparently, we can still keep our hair looking on point. Real dope visuals for this future society. We're introduced to this character. Who is this character and what is this council? Give us the backdrop as to who this society is, because this is only one issue. There's only so much you can do, and I have hella questions.
So I actually wrote, which may never see the light of day. I actually wrote a history for them, because I wanted them to be a real race if ever they got that chance. So
that's because they are, Angelique. They are.
They're now. It's wild because they are. I'm still talking about them as though they're not, but they are.
This is canon.
Mm-hmm.
They were intentionally melanated. They do get the choice, right? Because we're talking about brilliant extraterrestrials, and I'm a huge fan of Martian Manhunter and the concept that he chose to be black.
That's right.
He didn't have to be. So the whole concept is years ago, this race came upon the ability to jump between time and space.
Yeah.
And so instead of using it as a way to colonize or conquer or gain power, they perfected the science of archiving because they realized the importance of understanding the shifts in the timeline and understanding the differences between the different parts of the multiverse. And so understanding this is so big, they choose key figures where certain archivists focus on those and give them their own archive. And so what you're seeing here is two best friends, clearly the studious one and the one who's brilliant but is never on time, going through this point where they're giving basically their dissertation to the council as to why this should be their assignment. Their assignment should be on a ship called the Wind Rider, and their entire job should be to archive. And yes, for those out there, like somebody hit it right on the spot. I did choose Akasha's name specifically, linking back to this a concept of the Akashic records and this idea that there is a record of all of our lives somewhere. And you know, Ptolemy is making all of these wonderful bad puns because I am Ptolemy and Ptolemy is me.
The real Arendando says intergalactic griots.
Mm-hmm.
My babies. And I wanted them to be brilliant and I wanted them to be beautiful and be different shades of brown. I put a lot of references to like incredible, tall, not tall, thick, like Lashana Lynch is in the references, DeWanda Weiss is in the references, Tiana Paris is in the references. Like I wanted them to look across the board gorgeous in different ways.
To that point, we have Mr. Andrew Dollhouse here. I just want to point out something. So here's the previous page. This is drawn by Edwin Gallman. We also have Andrew on these colors. Check out the color scheme. Check out the shading. Check out the fact that we have two black women, two different shades of color, two different hues in their pigmentation, in both their skin and their hair. You've got computer screens below them. He even gets the lighting on their face and the shadows caused by the lighting by just varying the colors. This is talent. This is talent, man. Had to give you props on it. The colors really popped off the page. Shading was crazy. Mad props to you, man.
Thank you.
You took Angelique's notes and you ran with it on the shading. It was just it's mad dope.
My heart dropped when I saw their skin tones and their hair. It dropped.
You have to understand, I'm old. I've been reading comics for a long time. And when I was a kid, every black person was brown number 5.
Well,
or if you want to go Silver Age, they might be gray number 3. It was gray or brown. You didn't really have much choice. But now, with technology, post-milestone era, milestone 100 coloring process, I love to see colorists do their thing when it comes to us. And Andrew Dollhouse does his thing. Thank you, bro.
Thank you. I had one of those DC. They had a sheet. They would send out the potential colorists what the colors you had to use, and that's how they all had numbers and names, and that's how they would know, use this color for this. So the editors would tell you, like, just look at your swatch sheet and pick what color to go where. Yeah, so that was a thing.
Says, yes, artists never show the different skin tones. Black people, it's always one brown. That's right.
I use different skin tones for white people, too. Some a little bit yellow, pinker. I do the whole gamut there, too.
It's because you got talent, man.
Because they all have different skin colors, too.
All right. So we're talking about me say, who's the big bad in this book? I don't want to give it away yet, but you've got these archivists. Their job is to archive the legend that is Storm.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I have questions like, to what end? Why are they archiving it? And what does it take to become eligible to be archived? Because they started out having to do a presentation with these, this commission, this panel, to say why Storm is worthy of being archived.
Mm-hmm.
What is, in your mind, Angelique, what was kind of the thinking behind? What's the backstory on this?
So it had to be a key figure that events turned around, meaning that they were a linchpin in these major events that would shift the timeline or mold the timeline, or the way they changed would impact strongly the timeline, right? So when you look at Storm, how many teams she's been on, how many times she's been a leader, how many places she's lived, how many villains she's interacted with, right? How many people she's defeated. She becomes this linchpin, but also a wonderful case study in what a hero is. And so giving it, but there's so many different versions of her as well, right? So when you start thinking about Bloodstorm, when you start thinking about Thunderstorm, when you start thinking about all these different versions that you've kind of gotten and the infinite ideas of where Storm could be, when you start asking the questions, what if Professor X didn't show up? What happens then? That's what made her key, right? So one would suppose you've also got an archive on Tony Stark. One would suppose you've also got an archive on Luke Cage. And that we wanted to leave that door open, because that also means there could be an archive on some simple librarian who just happened to be in the same place at the same time in every single universe. We don't know. It gives you this open possibility for as many stories as possible.
That is, I think, a recurring theme throughout the pages in this book, is that you have open possibilities on stuff that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Are you paying attention, Mr. Ayodele? I'm looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think he already knows.
I'm pretty sure the fans would like to see the continuation of some of what you see. I'm just throwing it out there.
Just manifesting.
I got to speak it into existence. So, on that note, time for a commercial break, as they say.
That original line was actually, "I'll be right back," but it does not convert to comics when you cannot hear the tone.
Yeah.
I'll be back. Like, it doesn't convert. So we got commercial break.
It is not an X-Men comic book or a mutant comic book without some type of timeline crisis. Classic X-Men mutant writing in Marvel Comics has to involve some type of, this is going to affect the timeline in negative ways.
Because we've taken Murewa's Storm away from where she should be, and we need to put her back whole.
Was it intentional to sort of stay in that theme of classic X-Men comics?
I mean, I think that's also just classic comics, right? Like, when you have one book, you got to have, and I got some really good advice for some veterans. They were like, we know you want to do everything. You have 22 pages.
Right.
You have to hand this off to other writers. And we needed a way to get our, and I wouldn't even call her a big bad. We needed a way to get our morally complicated character into the book.
Our antagonist, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then we jump to this next chapter. And we are blessed with the art of one of the goats of comics, Aletha Martinez. Marvel and DC Comics' first Black woman artist. I love her art, and I think she's a special person. Of all of the things you mentioned before about having this, how important it was to you to do this scene in Egypt, the style of the clothing, and then there's this particular scene where this is flashback to the seminal event in history with Storm. Why come back to this? Please talk about that.
So while Storm is in Slumberous, which is actually the name of the technology that's keeping her asleep, she's dreaming, right? She doesn't know that she has been taken from her home. And she's supposed to be having good dreams. Here, though, I wanted to present this possible scenario, but also something that I would think that Storm would have thought about, right? Like, you grow up later realizing that you have these superpowers, and you're the only person that survives from this horrendous accident that happens with your parents. She has got to have gone back consistently and thought about, what if I had the ability to save my mom and dad? What if my powers would have allowed me to do that? And so putting her in this place where she's older, she's got this control over her powers. She has this ability, does two things, and I don't want to spoil the rest of the book, but it does place her where our antagonist kind of wants her, which is in an emotional position, which you later learn is important for what our antagonist is doing. But it also gives us this conflict that I'm sure Storm has probably had her entire life, which is, what if I could have saved them?
The Bruce Wayne question.
Yeah.
All right. So, and I love the fact that she calls her Binti. I was like, that was a cool reference.
It's very, very important to me. Before Tafuma before Zalika comes up. And that is Zalika in the market, for those who are wondering who that little girl is. That's not Storm. That is an AI version of Zalika, who is the granddaughter that was premiered in Marvel's Voices Legends #1. But she is, for all intents purposes, a computer program. But yeah, that's yeah. It was important for us to do things like, and I'm never going to pronounce it right until I hear it, but Bahias and saying Binti and these things to be there, because that's also Port of Storm.
Yeah. So we have this Storm. I guess for lack of a better term, two Storms from the future on this page. You've got the granddaughter, and then you've got this other version of Storm in the future. Talk about the style here. That's the first thing you notice, right? The hair, the jewelry.
I really dug in, and I looked at what styled and stylists were doing in certain different parts of the continent, because I didn't want to do something that people just automatically thought, oh, that's African. No, that's what you thought was African, because that's what we put in movies in the 1960s. But and maybe that is current. Is, hey man, all right, hold on 1 second. I have a dog who really wants attention, and everybody loves dogs. But I wanted, and so I actually really dug into what stylists were doing on the continent in different places, and wanted there to be this blend of modernized, really cool wardrobe that made her look regal, because that's her attitude. Like, she believes she is the smartest. But she is regal. Storm is, she's a goddess. She has been queen. She has the daughter of a princess. She comes from a line of royalty. And so, and I really wanted her to have a different hairstyle. You know, I wanted her locks to be something unique, to show that there are these different versions, that hair is malleable, but to have that contrast so we did not get confused about who is talking and who's fighting.
All right. Then we're back. Blue has pulled Storm's consciousness into this construct, which is supposed to be impenetrable. Can't complete the upload and return 616 Storm home until she leaves the construct. All right, so at this point, we have the crisis building. We have this confrontation. I just took this, when I first read this, I had no idea what was coming. I'm thinking, all right, well, Storm is popping around time or the multiverse or something. And she's meeting this future version of herself, very benign. It's kind of cool. And I love how you mentioned the Bahias here. We jump to a whole nother scene, a whole nother chapter, chapter 2. And we have a new artist on this, some guy named Charles Stewart III. Charles, how did you get on this book?
Well, okay, I'm actively trying to figure out how to always streamline things and not be too wordy, to be very succinct as possible. But long story short, I have to give a shout out to two people. I gotta give a shout out to Ricky Purdy, who's the overall talent guy for Marvel and bringing people in, but also Sarah Brunstad, because like she's the one who said, she hit me up in emails like, hey, Ricky sent me a portfolio of your stuff. I really like it. Would you want to join on like the Storm book? And at the time, I was in the middle of doing the DC book, Rise of the Power Company, and in my mind, it's like, man, I'm working on this book, and I don't know if I have time. But my body automatically said yes, reply, because I was like, I've got to be on this book. So that's how it happened. So shout out to those two people. And I'm forever grateful because, yeah, this is my first Marvel entry, my debut. And, yeah, I'm proud of it.
I loved your version of Storm here. Did you choose to do that costume, which is in her present Murewa's book right now?
That was the character design that was given to me. And personally, I like that one. Like, I appreciate like the different Storm costumes and variations that have been out there, especially like the white ones, but I appreciate the black and gold. Like that's just like, that to me, like that color scheme especially, and just like the sleek design with like the classic cape interwoven into like the wrists, that to me exudes Storm's regality and her beauty at the same time. So I personally like that one. But yeah, that was the design that was given to me.
I want to point out something here. What room is she in right now?
She is in a construct archival arena, basically, because like I believe like when Brittany wrote it, she says, oh yeah, so they're basically in like a construct of her memory, the memory archives, and literally just bookshelves are going endlessly up and up, and literally all I could think about is the scene from the Matrix where it's like literally like the guns, just endless guns, but then like just upwards. And so that was kind of what was going through my mind.
So Brittany Morris was your writer on this section, right?
Correct.
What was her notes on what the archive room would look like?
She specifically said, okay, so bookshelves that are filled with what is it? File boxes. That was the specific wording. It's like file boxes. So I literally just went online and Googled what's a file box. I was like, oh, okay, so they look like long boxes and comic book boxes.
I was going to point it out. To me, especially when I'm looking at this upper right-hand corner, that looks like what I'm looking at to my right here, with my long boxes and short boxes stacked in the exact same manner as that. I find it kind of meta that she's in an archive room of all of Storm's, escapades in her life and her feats, and it's a room full of comic book long and short boxes.
That needs to be worked into the story.
Look, I don't know if you intended to do that or not. If you didn't intend it, I will say that at the bare minimum, I think you were subconsciously influenced by that, because that's a really dope concept.
Sure. Yes.
Just roll with it. Just roll with it.
We'll go with
I thought that was brilliant. Because I was looking at that like, this man did not just make the most dope looking comic book room of all time be the storage facility for Storm's archives. All right. This place is more complicated. We're doing flashbacks into her most horrid moments in history. In defining who she is, we could have seen the happy moments of her life. Angelique, why are we looking at the worst moments of her life?
So, shout out to Brittany, because Brittany chose these moments out of all these other moments that showed the strength of Storm and who she is as a person and in her character. But those moments weren't always pretty. We knew we wanted to show moments where she had lost her power as well, because at the end of the day, that's, a hero without their power really is defining who they are. I think, the greatest example of that kind of is Captain America, right? Like, he was willing to go jump into a fire before any any serum, right? Like, he was like, I'm gonna go jump in this fire. Because it's right. There are other really great examples of that, to be clear, particularly characters that don't have any powers. But here we really wanted to show that it's not her powers that make her a hero. And Brittany, shout out for choosing these moments where, she sacrifices herself, where she has this respect for life, even life that would kill her, where, there are these lines that some of us would be like, yo, no, that alien's going down. Like, I'm not that hero. Me and the alien would have to part ways. Right. And so part of this is when you go back to the beginning, when Zalika first hits her and the first download starts happening, when the dream starts turning into a little bit of a nightmare, you start seeing a pattern that Blue is presenting to her, because Blue has made a very calculating decision about Storm. I'm trying my best not to spoil anything.
Well, I mean, you raised a good point that I actually hadn't thought about, and now it makes perfect sense. All of these moments that you've presented of Storm are not just, I mean, the way Blue is presenting it, it's kind of like these are bad decisions on your part, in this particular instance, but they're also points of extreme vulnerability, coupled with the fact that quite a few of these are when she was, for all intents and purposes, powerless. And it's kind of like, it's one thing when you're Omega level powered or you're God level Storm, Eternal Storm, what have you. But the true test of your character is when you don't have those powers, when you're at your weakest, and that reveals who you really are. How do you face adversity when you don't have all of that power? And it's an interesting. That makes a lot more sense, particularly given how the story unfolds.
Well, it's kind of like, how do you keep saving other people's lives when you're dying?
Right. Maria, looking at you. All right. So the question is asked, why did you choose to feel compassion for a creature that wished you harm? And she talks about emotions are not always a choice. I cannot control how I feel, just what I do with my feelings. And that part, man, that was deep. That was deep because Storm is, for all her passion or rather compassion, she's also one of the most guarded when it comes to her emotions. You never see, I shouldn't say never, but you rarely see Storm just fly off the handle in an adverse situation. She usually keeps her cool and comes up with solutions. She doesn't get like upset. When she's upset, hurricanes start to happen. So she's always seems like she's somewhat guarded in her emotions. And it's interesting to have her say this. I can't control how I feel, just what to do with my feelings. Talk to me about this.
I think Brittany understands, and what a lot of us understand, right, is, there are moments that you feel empathy. There are moments that you feel frightened. There are moments that, what's up, Steve? There are moments that you feel a connection, but at this point, it's like, do you choose fight or flight? Do you choose to destroy instead of create? And I think something that's so key to who Storm is that she creates, literally creates with her whole being. And I think, for a lack of like a better comparison, that is so key and core to people of color, but particularly Black women, right? Like that is a very, and I kind of, and I want everybody, please read that interview with Allison Seeley. Like, and she shouts out her favorite moment that she had when she played Storm, and it's a moment where she flies off the handle. And I remember I was on the phone and Allison was like, she vexed. Black girl vexed. And I was like, I forgot you were from the islands. But, you get to have those moments because you do hold them in. And you can only imagine how many times Storm is like, oh, y'all didn't put me in this situation again? For real? Like, for real? No, y'all just, I'm going to go fix this for y'all again. And that's important.
She's explaining like why she's put her life on the line so many times, to the point where she has literally put herself in the line of fire. She did it with Rogue, she countlessly puts herself out there in extreme danger to protect others. And Blue's calling her out and saying, that doesn't make any sense. That's completely illogical. You seem to be someone who's so guarded against their emotions. You seem to be doing emotional decisions. This is interesting to me because this is a Storm celebration book, right? And we're exploring the character. This whole year is about celebrating Storm. Murewa is doing this run where he's giving a definitive deep dive as to who she is. Murewa, let me ask you. Like, what's your takeaway on these angles and explorations of this character?
This particular scenes actually stood out to me because it's actually something I'm actually exploring in X Manhunt in the X event as well. Is the fact that it's a balance of what you and Angelique are saying. It's yes, Storm is always composed. She's always has her emotions in control and everything. But at the same time, it's not all her emotions. there's this aspect of herself that she refuses to cage, she refuses to control, and that is usually parts of herself that deals with empathy. And it reminds me a lot of My Hero Academia and how they describe heroes in My Hero Academia. Is there's something about some certain types of heroes, you know, and we also see it in Captain America too, like Angelique said, where it's when there's they don't think about themselves first. They don't even think. I think that's what dialogue is saying. They don't even try to. There's no logic. There's no logic processing involved. They immediately put themselves in harm's way as long as it's to protect somebody else. So, and I think that's Storm. So as logical as she can be, as calculative as she can be, we've seen her be that as the X-Men leader. We've seen her absorb some of those things through osmosis when she was Queen of Wakanda, through T'Challa, who can be a very, very logical person. But at the same time, when it comes to protecting people, she refuses to put that emotion under control. She allows herself to be this rageful person as long as it is to protect people. She doesn't control that side of herself. And that's why it can somehow seem as if, oh, she comes off emotional at some point or illogical or irrational. But when it's to protect people, she puts that aside. It's all emotions in that aspect. And it was nice seeing this and saying that, okay, it's nice to say that your vision of Storm is also what other creators also see of her, because it's something I'm actually exploring currently too in future issues that you're going to see in like Storm 6 especially. It's what brings her in collision with Cyclops, because Cyclops is 100%, I'm going to think logically, you know, like what is that? And Storm is going to be like, when it comes to protecting people, I put logic aside. What's, you know, I want to protect this particular person, you know. And so yeah, so it's nice seeing that, you know, despite, you know, different backgrounds, everything, when we see this character, we see the same person.
Let's also give a shout out here to Charles Stewart. We got Storm having a nice conversation. She's kind of chilling, being logical. And then Storm about to go to hurricane mode. She like snapped. And you know, the thing with doing these one shots, and we have this conversation with Joe Illidge recently. When you have these singular issues and you've got to accomplish a lot in 22 pages, as you said, Angelique, you have to do more with less. And so storytelling, you know, is important visually as well as it is with the narrative that's being typed on the page. In this one panel, you see Storm turn. Everything else was a direct look. If you look, I'm a detail guy. I love details like this. You have this conversation where the two of them are staring each other there in the eye, right? Everything's logical. You even got a little matrixy looking thing, you know, kind of representing a computer type thing. It just screams 1-0's logic and reason. And then the minute the conversation goes in a different direction, Storm's no longer looking at her. She's kind of giving her the side eye, and her face is all gnarled up in this emotional state. And you've got the lightning crackling about her, and her fist balled up. The only thing missing is maybe a couple knives between her fingers. You really just, you said all of that with just one panel. That's storytelling with an economy of space. So stuff like that, I dig. I get into stuff like that. I like looking at details like that. And just want to give you props on that, Charles.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I got to give props on the script, obviously, because anytime you have good writing as an artist, you want to elevate it. Like anytime like you see any like great show, always think behind like the great acting was a great, a great script. Anytime like you send somebody into battle, it's like, you want me to kill 100 men? give me a great weapon. And so, yeah, I feel like that's what I had.
Speaking of great ship, shout out again to Brittany on this dialogue in this section. It really was kind of it's really kind of the climax of the book. While you have allowed emotion to eclipse the already feeble logic with which you were born, I've been running a simple macro and an algebraic expression to represent and generalize your 30-year-long pattern of behavior. Murewa, we talked about Storm's age.
Yeah.
You said you were going to reveal something. It didn't happen, but it seems to have happened here. How
I was
old
so happy. Yeah, I was so happy I put here because I think in Storm issue 4, there was like instead of years ago, there was supposed to be a particular amount of years, and when the father says, "Oh, you are 5, Ororo," so you just add 5 and the years ago, but it was cut last minute, so I didn't even see that draft where it was cut from. So I felt down like, oh, because I really wanted to make it official, like what our age was going to be. I think in that one it was supposed to be 29. So seeing this being 30, I'm like, yeah, that tracks, makes sense. So it was really nice. And this came around just a few weeks after. So it was like, yeah, perfect.
So your editor said, no, not so fast. We're not doing that. Your editor's who? Tom Brevort?
Yeah.
So Tom is like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. But Sarah Brunstead, shout out to Sarah, is like, yeah.
And Angelique. Yeah, like we're putting it here.
Forget what Tom said. Storm is 30 years old.
I mean, we always had trapdoor. Like, you don't know when she was stolen. We didn't say the date. We just know she's living at the sanctuary. I just want to be clear. We did leave a trapdoor, but yes.
So she could be 30 plus. Let's not disrespect her and throw more years on her and say she's 39. Let's just say she's 30.
Listen, Black don't crack, so she could be 39. She could be 40.
Could be 39, but let's let her be 30.
A good age. Perpetual.
Good age. She was probably 20 when Charles reached out to her in Giant Size X-Men #1. So 10 years as doing her thing. All right. Another example as to why these are clearly comic book boxes. You've got comic book size paper inside the boxes, Charles. I know you don't want to admit it, but you were clearly subconsciously influenced by this. I just want to point that out to you.
Clearly.
I love this page. This was a splash page. You're not supposed to do splash pages on a one shot because it takes up a lot of space, but this was worth it.
I mean, technically, it's not a splash page.
It's a half a page, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You took up a lot of real estate, but it was worth it. This is a dope image. This could be a poster somewhere. All right. Now we're in the next section. Chapter 3, written by Curtis Baxter, art by Karen Darbo, colors by Yen Nitro. We have a crisis situation at this point. It's now clearly evident that Blue isn't who she appeared to be, or at least what the reader was thinking she was.
What I love here is that Brittany picked up the ball, and I'm more of a rugby player, so and then was like, Curtis was like, got it, and just went here, right? Because we had certain things we knew we needed to be here, the status bar, so people understood what was happening. So we remind them of what's going on, but this whole concept of utilizing the pattern to exploit her, shout out to Brittany and Curtis for like running that to the end zone on this, because going through the memories, getting that pattern, wasting the time to get the download, and then linking it back into the computer language so beautifully here. It was great.
And then we've got, this is probably the biggest splash page that we have in the book. trying to summarize everything that's going on. What would you say is going on here, Angelique?
They're having a fight inside of the construct, right? And I think, you know, had it been a movie and we had CGI and we could have motion, I'm sure, you know, we could have made things happen in milliseconds. But, you know, here we're really getting a chance to explore. And if you think about Blue making these steps of finding out the pattern and going into the boxes being like step 2, like step 1 is getting her into the construct. Step 2 is this idea that she's recognizing the pattern. Step 3 is her just like going ham. She is going for the jugular. She is finding every single spot that's reinforcing your emotions have been your greatest weakness. And this is also a chance for us to get to explore these different moments in Storm's history, especially for like the deep cut fans.
Now, what I couldn't figure out, who is the character with the glasses?
Oh,
Why?
she's
Go ahead, Mira.
she's from Greg Pak's Storm run. I think in issue 1, the girl that was having issues in the mansion and Storm had to take home to like stay away from school, and then she'll come back and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so what you're kind of seeing here is every time Storm has tried to help what Blue is trying to say, but you harmed.
Marisol is what they're saying.
Yeah, it's Marisol.
Yeah.
All right. And here, Storm's got to fight back. This is another instance where she is supposedly depowered because we're right down to the line. Blue has the advantage. She's about to overcome Storm's download or upload, as it may be. And Storm manages to fight back. How?
The Bahias.
The Bahias.
So there's this line where she goes, there's nothing. So originally, you know, Sarah asked me, is like, yo, Storm is usually on the defensive. And like, we've talked about that a couple of times. Like, why does Storm like suddenly start trusting this weird woman inside of a construct? Like, you got to help me out here. Well, the secret is it's the Bahias. It's something that's from home. It's something that's familiar, but also they're part of the construct. Like, she couldn't have made it any other way. The joke is said there's nothing artificial about them, but that's just the taste. It's a sensation. I watched Hackers and a lot of other very computer-generated type movies.
The Matrix is what comes to mind when I think about this.
But like really, it's this idea where we flip the script that something that was meant to harm and control, because Storm is so powerful, she's figured out a way to go, well, that was nice, but you're wrong, right? But only after she's had this conflict of conscience, right? So that's a very Storm moment, right? Because Storm has had multiple conflicts of conscience over her 50-year career. But here, it really is going back to this idea that she's ingested part of the construct. You're welcome, Murewa. Here, her consciousness has ingested part of the construct. I don't know if that will be left in this book or somewhere else in the far future. But that's it, because again, we have to remember, this is just Storm's consciousness. This is a manifestation of her inside the construct. Her body is still in slumberous. It's still outside of the system. And so you're having two consciousness fight each other. And had she not ingested part of the construct, it would have been a different fight.
Yeah.
Message.
That's for you, Maria.
But also, I think, and some people have shouted out here, this is also a moment, as a shout out to artists and a shout out to the dialogue. No manner of replication, even if it's pulled from 1,000 different places, is going to replace the real thing. You can't replace Storm.
She is one of one. All right. So now we're back. An epilogue. Storm upload completed 100%. Blue download halted at 99%. 99% seems like a lot.
You don't say.
I mean, technically Storm got the edge up, but that seems like a lot of blue uploaded. Considering how powerful Storm is, and blue is simply a copy for all intents and purposes of Storm without the sort of moral center removed. Her indomitable will, if it is imprinted on blue, concerns me that 99% of her is still downloaded.
You don't say.
Yeah.
Where could she have gone?
Where, oh, where indeed. Where, oh, where indeed. As we see in this final panel. With the question mark on end. So, Murewa, what issue can we expect Blue to come back?
Literally what everybody's been asking in the chat too. So
literally what everyone has asked in the chat. Murewa, are you going to run with at least something from this storyline?
Definitely, but we shall see, because we're still trying to get more and more issues from Marvel with as much as we get sales records of issues. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I think of this just for everybody. I think of this as, and I've interviewed Chris a couple of times, and this is one of the things I love about Chris Claremont's work. Chris Claremont would write things and not come back to them for 3
dangling threads for decades. This guy,
yeah,
and that was part of why Blue needed to have a question mark.
Yeah.
That I think is also just a head nod to, we don't need to tell you, but no, right? Like Blue went into an escrow and she's not in Storm's body, but she's not in the system anymore. That doesn't mean she doesn't exist.
Exactly. This is why I love doing these shows, man, because this is where you get these types of details. It's really the reference, the homage to Chris Claremont, leaving that dangling thread storyline out there. That's really cool. Do you guys have a moment to answer some of these questions people have been burning the chat with? All right.
That's what we're here for. Let's do it.
Butterfly Kiss. How did the team come up with the antagonist in the story? And will we see Blue again in the future? She literally was so close to becoming 616. Well, in answer to the second question, we will see her again because Murewa cannot possibly not introduce her. We'll save that for next year because I'm speaking it into existence.
Always.
First of all, shout out to Murewa Ayodele for getting Storm past the 11 issue limit. He will now have
we've officially crossed the 11 issue mark.
Yes.
Let's go.
Shout out to you. Now we're going to double down on it. I'm going to speak it into existence. In issue 24, Murewa's going to bring back Blue.
I love it.
Please.
Well, she gets to give her an annual. She come back in the annual.
Hey.
Andrew's giving himself some work.
Speak it into existence, sir. Blue, this is going to be a really nerdy answer, and then I'm going to give you like a really cool answer. So I'm a nerd. Surprise. But if you know anything about computers, you can delete everything off a computer, but a really smart person can go and find traces of them and all of the things inside
Bring it back
a
in.
memory and like piece it back together, right? Like nothing really disappears, much like the human brain. Like stuff is back there that you can't access, but it's still there.
It's there.
And so this idea of if you have these people archiving all of these extremely powerful consciousnesses, even if you put it into an archive, it sits within this space. And so what is this concept of if they all started creating itself? Because this is not a normal consciousness. This is Storm, right? It's not like you're downloading a book. You're downloading an omega level mutant. What does that do? And so it was also inspired by AI learning models. And this idea of where do these models learn from and how they come together, and this concept of them only being a facsimile. They're not a real, they're not, Charles's work. They're not Andrew's work. Like they're from a piece and they put it together and they followed a set of instructions. And so the concept is, what if there was a Storm that was not beholden to the actual emotional experience of those memories, that didn't have a moral compass, that was more calculating and was on a set of hero instructions instead of learning how to be a hero by doing it.
Right.
Somebody was like, make me a weather hero. And that's blue. But I always love the concept of our hardest challenge is fighting ourselves. Like, I think that is a beautiful challenge that exists in so many storylines. It's like, how do you fight yourself?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we haven't had that many evil versions of Storm in comics. We've had Bloodstorm, which is kind of quasi-evil, kind of sort of thing. It's more of a bloodless thing. We had Chris Claremont in X-Men Forever had an evil Storm. But there just haven't been what if Storm went bad type storylines, because the concept is kind of scary when you think about it. So that was kind of cool.
I like this.
Oh, thank you.
Next question. Damon Watson says, hey, Murewa, do you see yourself pulling on story threads and concepts in Marvel Voices and Lifedream in the future stories as your run gets extended? That's a good question, considering, as Angelique pointed out, they brought back Zalika. There was a character that was in, it was one of the Black Panther series where Storm found this mutant girl on the streets. I think it was in Egypt or someplace like that, and brought them back into the X-Men. There's a lot of characters that Storm comes across. Is this something that you're planning on drawing on in the future?
I think I just wrote a short story for a book that has not been announced yet for Storm, where I'm borrowing some of those stuff. Since I started out, writing stuff for like Marvel Voices and stuff like that, so I have a soft spot for that as well. That because I remember writing kind of stuff like Wakanda Forever, and like wishing that, oh man, I wish somebody would use some of this stuff that I was putting into the Black Panther mythos and things like that. So yeah, I have a soft spot for that. So if the opportunity obviously comes up, I'm definitely going to be pulling some of those threads.
Did you just announce that you have another short story Storm book coming out?
I don't think that's what he said. He was working on something that he couldn't say that he was working on that might
I'll run
that might involve the character we're talking.
See, Angelique's trying to cover your Marvel butt right now. But I recognize what that was. What that was?
This is a blackcomiclords exclusive.
You gosh darn right it was. Tell Tom to call me if he has a problem with it.
You don't want that.
I don't need that smoke. That's all right. All right.
You don't need that heat, sir. You don't need that heat.
Yeah. Here we go. Next one. Angelique, does this race span the multiverse or just limited to one reality? Eclectic Blurred Niche, you categorically every week have the best damn questions in the chat. I appreciate you.
They span the multiverse because they sit outside of it.
Yeah. For them to specify 616.
Wow, that's dope.
Well, he has a follow-up question. Do they have any interaction with the TVA since the main timeline was referenced? Angelique is automatically cringing.
You're trying to get people in trouble.
I specifically really wanted to write the Sacred Timeline, and I did not because I'm not going to write somebody else's story for them. And I'll just leave that there because anything is possible in the Marvel Universe.
She doesn't want to give away her ideas, they might pay her for it sometimes in the future.
Yeah, that sounds like an IP issue. That sounds like a future What If episode.
But I will tell you, I was inspired by creating the opposite of the Collector.
Nice.
Huh. Nice, very nice. All right. Who is the grandpa? You introduced the granddaughter, Salika. Who is the grandpa?
Go read Marvel's Voices, Legends #1.
This should be a pretty automatic answer.
I like it's their Baba is in Marvel's Voices, Legends #1.
Shame on you for not having read that storyline. This should be something that you should intuitively know. I'm not going to say anything further on.
You could also just Google Zalika and Marvel's Voices, and it comes up. I just want you to go down the rabbit hole.
I don't want you to Google it. I want you to buy the book and read it and post about it and give props to the creators that made it, because it's important to me personally as my favorite superhero. It's a big hit right there. All right. Angelique, when we making this a series?
Man, let them let me.
That's not a denial.
That's it. Just let them let me. We were happy to get this out. And Murewa, I know you know that this is that moment where you get it out and it's in the world and you're like,
yeah. And if this sells enough, if this is getting a lot of hits, I'm sure it helps in convincing them as well. So keep telling people about the book.
There's no backseats. You guys created canon. That's powerful.
Well, and that was one of the big things about Marvel's Voices when we first started the anthologies. In the first year, we had a conversation and we go, yo, is this book canon? And we had a definitive answer. All the Marvel's Voices books are canon, which is also why we had to be very respectful of the Storm solo book and put her safely back where we found her with no scratches on her.
I have a question for you, honestly. Given that you are the head of Marvel Voices, I have a question about the canon. Does that include covers? Because that Steel Freeze cover, you know the one I'm talking about, the barbershop.
The barbershop one?
The barbershop one. That has to be canon.
I think covers live in a different world.
No, don't say that.
And interiors, I'm sorry. And I can't make them canon because then you will not get some of the cool covers that we have. And so I just need covers to live outside of canon because there's just some things we see on covers that we are never going to see in interiors.
Okay, so now that makes pressure on me to give to Murewa. You're going to have to somehow recreate that barbershop scene in a store.
Barbershop scene so smooth.
But instead, it's going to be a hair salon, and it's going to be Storm Monica and Misty chilling at Riri, chilling at a hair salon, just chopping it up.
That reminds me, there's a story where the champions, the young ladies who are in the champions, all like it's Shori, Kamala, and Riri all have like this spare apartment, and I think it's in Chicago. And they're all chilling and like just being teenagers for a minute. Also on that Stealth Freeze cover, if you've never looked in the reflection of the mirrors, there's more characters in that cover than most people think there are.
Absolutely more
Stealth
characters.
Freeze is a beast.
I've been. It really has been a long time since you've been on here, Angelique. That storyline with the young ladies in the apartment, that could have been a whole series by itself. I mean, just even as a Marvel Unlimited, Stephanie Williams did a Living Heroes series.
Yep. Oh, I have it.
Fantastic book. I don't know what's going on, why that hasn't been made into a book, but that would be an excellent Marvel Unlimited limited series or something like that. Or
that needs to happen.
It should at the very minimum be a recurring thing in Marvel Voices. I'm just throwing it out there.
All right, noted.
Eclectic Blurty Niche again with the fire questions. Is Ptolemy's race long-lived, or does their archivist role grant them the longevity to do their jobs?
Ooh.
Are they human even?
So they're not human.
They're not human. So
they're not human. They actually have a name. I will not give you the spelling. We had to go through this very long time because as you're naming things, you make sure the name has not been taken by someone else. Ilmarians, but it's spelled in a very specific way. And if you look, what page is it on? When you get the book, the Luminary Archive, that's actually referring to them. And so basically it is, you've got this race that has discovered these pathways between universes. There is an inference that they live for a long time because they're on like the 1400th stop when they get to the storm story that we're at. But I can not confirm at this time how long they live because they also live outside of the constructs of time and space.
Yeah. It's funny. It was recently revealed. Murewa, we talked about this in our last StormWatch episode about the revelation of Eternity's, this version of Eternity. I think it was in the Phoenix comic book where he had this African mask, right? It would be interesting, given the high melanation of these Lemurians and their role as archivists of the timeline, if they were somehow connected to eternity.
Because they kept mentioning eternal stuff, eternity.
I'm just throwing it out there. Just don't. This is what we call a softball.
So I will say this. In my personal history, and it has not been written in a comic book, so it does not mean it is canon. The archivists spend the length of several lifetimes meticulously collecting data from the consciousness of key temporal beings, storing it on mobile data stations, and making sure that each universe's version remains unaware of their actions.
Is there any end to the multiverse?
I hope not.
The answer is no.
I mean, if you believe in Doctor Who, then yeah.
No, because it's eternal. Come on, Murewa, throw me a bone. All right. Moving on. Let's see what else we got here. Another eclectic blur. This guy's got a lot of questions. Are there any special features like two parts attributed to Tony's race that separate them from regular humans? It's a biology question.
We're not going to get into anatomy, but we, it was something that John Jennings and I tossed around, in that they do have a choice of their outward manifestation. And so if you look, there's two different types of counselors that you see.
Yeah.
In the book, you see one that's got that smooth little fade, like he got this little Dominican cut on his beard.
I was just
No,
thinking about
that
that.
dude's beard. Let me
Mhm,
see.
Right.
mhm.
And then you've got the other three kind of amorphous beings who've got these hoods on, that are almost translucent. And so, it is a concept where, I loved, again, this idea that they chose this manifestation.
The Dominican dude had, like, just came out the barbershop, so that's an interesting manifestation. Ernie, Blurred Without Fear, reported that Tom Bavort said that there are no viable black X-Men. Oh, this question.
Ooh.
Has he said as much to you all, and do you see your stories challenging that assertion? We did a whole show about this.
No.
Yeah.
This is a you question, because we tackled this question pretty hard.
Yeah, it was I think it was one of the articles that took one of his tweets out of context. It was more of him challenging it was more of an open letter to creators to challenge them to actually write viable black characters. And currently in the X-Men office, his office have actually been one of the ones that have actually been using some of the most black male characters. We're seeing in X-Men by Jed McKay. The new characters just introduced.
Ransom?
I forgot. No. The new team that helped destroy one basis, ONE basis. Bledem or something. I forgot their names, but there are two black characters there. Gil Simone as Ransom, that's Uncanny X-Men. Eve Ewing as although there is
Bronze.
black female as Bronze. In Storm, we have Maggot that is coming up. We have this thing. Manifold.
Mm-hmm.
Manifold and more characters, more black characters, male black characters coming up. So his office have actually been the one using the most black male characters than any other offices. So it's easy to quote him wrong, but if you actually look at his books, he's been using them the most.
And a lot of it has to do with, and this is something that, I've explored extensively. It's like bringing in the writers who love them, right? Like, one of the things that we've talked about Claremont a couple times, there is one thing beyond anything else you could say about Chris Claremont. He loved Misty Knight, and he loves Storm.
Yeah.
He loves those characters, right? He's not just writing them because they're fun. Those characters he wanted those characters to fully exist, right? Even when talking to him about, Destiny and my brain. We just did the wedding issue. Why is my brain? Mystique, thank you. Destiny, Mystique, like, when I did that interview with him about Destiny, Mystique, like, it was like he was talking about old friends. He fully crafts these characters. And sometimes, not all characters get the right treatment. And I think that we've seen a lot more characters get more well-rounded treatments where people can invest in them and they feel like they've got more texture in the story. And so I think that's just really important to keep doing. They're not just there to, consume all the gamma radiation and then fly into space and then realize they can breathe in space.
Eclectic has a couple other questions for you guys. Is their physical manifestation a choice, if their physical manifestation is a choice, is their gender a choice as well?
I think that's a good thing to chew on. And my lawyer came out. I don't know.
Yes, it did.
Oh, wow. Did we go to Trills? Oh, I love the fact that you just made a comparison to it. What? What?
There has long been ties of the X-Men to Star Trek. It's a great crossover series.
Once upon a time, I played a Trill. True story for another day. No, I will not say they're similar in their respect for knowledge, but I think that's about it.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here and sharing this book with all of us. Angelique, we'll start with you. I'd like to know, let the people know, what else do you have coming up that you can talk about? Where can we find your work?
There are things that are not announced. What is something I can say that's announced? That we actually know a date that doesn't keep moving. Women of Marvel is coming out. We've got Women of Marvel coming out in March. I did the introduction for this particular issue. It does kind of fall in the Marvel's Voices family, so I've been consulting editor on that book for the same amount of time. And I have some more announcements coming down the pipe. That may not be Marvel.
That may not be Marvel. Well, you can always come back and talk to us about that. I think you're working on a book with John Jennings.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. So that book ended up being longer than people anticipated, and we dug in and really did the research on it. And so they gave us the room to add more space. And so it took a little longer than we expected, but that book is on its way to layout.
For those that don't know, she and John Jennings are working on a book called My Superhero is Black.
Yeah.
It will be huge.
I'm very excited about it.
As we all are. Charles Stewart.
Yes, sir.
What do you got coming up, man?
Nothing by Big Two thus far. But, I'm pretty
Doesn't have
sure
to be Big Two.
Yeah, but I think since it was already announced, I could say it. But I'm gonna be doing some stuff with the Epiphany engine. Tony Control had reached out to me, so yeah, it's like that'll be coming. Not sure when exactly. And then obviously some of the other creator-owned stuff. But that's all I got in my pipeline for right now.
Sweet. Andrew Dahlhouse, sir, colorist extraordinaire.
A Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur 10-pager in the new one-shot. The Ironheart Bad Chemistry with John. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles He-Man, number 4.
The what?
Yeah, for Dark Horse and Space Ghosts at Dynamite.
Space Ghosts.
This is a Black Comic Lords exclusive.
Okay, that deserved that one. You deserved that one on that announcement. Murewa, what do you got coming up the pike?
Yeah, keep supporting the Storm Solo series. I have more and more issues lined up. I think volume 3, the third story arc, is going to be titled Thunder War. So we're excited to share that with people.
All right. Well, we have a thank you for your time and your answers from Eclectic Blurty.
So before we go, can I do one more shout out?
Of course.
So for those who don't know, I and Brittany Morris are the first Black women to write on a solo Storm book.
Really?
Yes. on a solo Storm book. And I want to shout out Brittany. And I want to shout out Sarah again. I know everybody has shouted out Sarah, but like Sarah really dug in and really, this is her last thing before she left Marvel. This is the first Storm book where it's been this collaboration of this many Black creators. And we're really proud. And I just want to echo what Mira said. Buy the books. That's how you get more books.
That's incredible. This truly is the year of Storm. History's being made with the character left and right. Rhea just broke this record. You guys just created history literally with this one issue. Hopefully we'll also have a MCU announcement soon on Storm. Man, what a great day to be alive. To echo quid pro quo, pre-order soon, pre-order often, put it on your pull list if you want the books to be successful. I cannot emphasize the importance of this enough. Everyone. This is my mantra for 2025. I'm going to keep saying it until you guys get tired of me saying it. Pre-order, pre-order, pre-order. Every book that you want, every character that you complain that you don't see enough of, every creator that you wish to support, including all of these on the screen that you have here. Pre-order their books, and that's how you keep the wheels turning. So thank you. Brittany says thank you to you, Angelique. Damon gives you props. AJ, thank you, sir. I'm so glad we're finally letting someone Black folks write her. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is an incredible moment. Storm is a A-list character. Mm-hmm. She is an A-list character, and she needs to be treated as such. And shout out to Marvel for giving her that final push, that promotion to have her recognized as such. Thank you all for joining us today. Support Black Comic Lords. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Share this video over your social media, and thank you all for your time. And thank everybody on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate each and every one of you. I wish you all well. You are all welcome anytime. Wait a second. Wait a new person. I just realized something. Angelique Roche, you interviewed with us so early, long time ago that you were never indoctrinated into the squad.
Oh.
Charles has been indoctrinated. Murewa's been indoctrinated. You have never been. All right, here we go. I want you to look into the screen and say your name, and then say, "I am a Black Comic Lord." What? Whoops, wrong screen. Hold on. Don't go anywhere. This is what happens when I don't have a producer. Devices.
Producers are magicians.
Yeah, clearly. All right.
Be nice to a producer today.
There you go.
Hi. I am a Black Comic Lord.
You have to say your name. Listen.
Hi. My name is Angelique Roche, and I am a Black Comic Lord.
Keep that the whole thing.
I think I got it right.
All right. Andrew, you are next.
Oh.
Say your name.
Andrew, go ahead.
Say your name and say I'm a Black Comic. Go ahead.
I'm Andrew Dalhouse. I'm a Black Comic Lord.
There you go. You guys have now been indoctrinated into the squad. Charles still hasn't paid his dues yet. We won't bring that up. It has a secret password, so he'll share that with you guys later. Welcome to the fam.
Thank you.
But is there a AAA discount?
There is not a AAA discount, but if you mention the Black Comic Lords at any local comic shop, you will be met with puzzled faces. So that's.
But the ones, the real ones, they'll hand you the badge. It'll be like, in the back.
Charles, we talked about the stuff you're not supposed to be revealing the stuff behind. This is why you're always in trouble with the squad. You're always talking about the stuff behind the scenes. You're not supposed to let people know. All right.
Hey, someone's got to be the booster gold of like the group.
All right, fair enough.
I know we're different.
Team player.
Appreciate you, Black Comic Lords. We got you.
All right.